what I wanted to kick off with was with artists as diverse as Pink and Foreigner, what is the common denominator from your angle? Or to put it another way, how the hell is the same guy the right drummer for Velvet Revolver and Cher?
Well, I attribute my abilities to having grown up listening to a lot of music, playing in bands very early on that played everything from bossa novas to Led Zeppelin to Black Sabbath to Foreigner. I mean, the joke was when I got Foreigner, I was singing the same harmony part that I sang when I was 15 or 14 in my rock band.
Wow.
So, you'll find that most musicians that are very well rounded and have really been educated have the ability to play a lot of different styles. And it really has to do with it's having what I call big ears, so you're really listening, but it's having the vocabulary and having the experience of having played different styles and paying a lot of attention and how you get along. Because so much of what makes a successful group or what makes a successful, even when you're hired, because most of my gigs I've been a hired gun. Foreigner, I was a band member off and on for a bit, but almost every other gig I'm a hired gun, and it really comes down to not only the way you play, but the way that you communicate and the way that you fit in and the band member that you are. I mean, my nickname from Pink she gave me years ago is Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. That's because I always reminded her of the power of gratitude. And so she looks to me, she looks to everybody to give her inspiration. But one of the early things that drew her to me, in addition to my playing, was my ability to just be a light beam and bring that positivity. Because that's what one of the things to me, I look at my job as being of service. I'm in the service industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that not a lot of musicians look at it that way, but when I get on stage, I'm there to be of service to Pink, to the band, to the audience, to the crew. I mean, I want to make everybody's life easy.
Mm.
And as a drummer, I also look at the drummer's job. We're kind of the shepherd. We're kind of the foundation. So I'm also the one that gets in the bus last, kind of makes sure everybody else is in. I'd rather, even in my relationship with my wife, I'd rather be happy than right. So I realize if everybody else around me is happy, I'm pretty easy to please. I'm not a whiner. I don't complain much. It's let me do what I do. And I do my job. I do my due diligence. As a great example of what you're talking about is when I auditioned for Stevie Nicks and I got the gig. Stevie Nicks ended up being Stevie Nicks and Sheryl Crow together. But I didn't know that when I auditioned for Stevie. But I studied because I knew that her favorite drummer was Mick Fleetwood. So I studied every nuance about Mick's playing, even down to the tuning, the way that I tuned the drums, the heads that I used. And so because I knew what she was used to, I knew what she liked. And Mick is such an amazing drummer, and he's so quirky. He throws fills in weird places. So I kind of memorized the fills and where they go. So she would have a sense of comfort knowing that, oh, yeah, this guy kind of gets it. And Mick hits hard. I happen to hit hard, luckily. So it's really about doing your homework and then being able to expand and express yourself. I remember when I went to see when Steely Dan reemerged with the Two Against Nature, and they had 3 different drummers at different times, and I won't mention the drummer that I saw, but the tour that I saw, the drummer didn't do his homework. He's a brilliant drummer that everybody knows. He's got his amazing reputation, but he played it like him. So what I do is I realize that if you don't do your due diligence and you miss certain things, you're kind of cheating everybody. So I do play it like me, but I play it like a version of me that's also influenced by the other drummers if I haven't played on the record. I mean, some of Foreigner's stuff I played on a Simple Minds record that I toured.
Mm.
But when I'm playing the other Simple Minds stuff, you know damn well I'm playing as much like Mel Gaynor as I can because he's such a great drummer with such a great sound. So it's about understanding the nuances, understanding the history, understanding where they come from, understanding what you expect, discussing it with them if you need to. And it's
Mm.
not just the artist, it's the musical director, because then, when I get hired to be a sideman, quote unquote, then I'm also dealing with musical directors like Waddy Wachtel, the great guitar player, was Stevie's musical director, or Paul Merkovich, who is the MD for The Voice, was Cher's musical director and Pink's musical director. And so you begin to learn and understand what works for them as well.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget. And sometimes we make mistakes. I was out with Cher. We've been playing this for a while. We've been playing the same show. We played the first show. We played the Believe tour. And there's one segment where the dancers are doing all this crazy aerial stuff. Now, the Cher tour was the first tour to use the aerial, the silks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So they were actually, what I didn't realize was they were actually cueing off of my drum fills in this one section. So one night I thought, I'm going to vary the drum fills a little bit.
Oh, no.
Well, Dory, the director slash choreographer, who's a dear friend of mine now. I mean, we were friends back then, but the moment the gig was done, in the dressing room, we boom, 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 boom. His door was like, Mark, I got to talk to you right away. She said, Bubba almost died because you played different fills. And I realized, I got to really be careful. I have a responsibility. And I've learned that, of course, with Pink, because Pink is doing all of these aerial stunts that she can literally die. She almost died one night. That's another story.
Oh.
But we all are depending on each other for cues.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to be very, very careful. And that's another reason when I realized being on the road, like with Pink, you have 225 people on the road.
Wow.
Everybody is the best at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, you may think, I'm the drummer and my job's more important than the girl who brings out the water for Pink. But when Pink runs back after doing an aerial stunt, she runs from the satellite stage to the back and she's super, super thirsty and can barely catch her breath. If that water's not on the stage, guess who's the most important person in the world at that point? So we all rely on each other. It is such a group effort, and I have so much love and respect for everybody. I mean, the riggers, those are the people that climb up and hang first of all, they're doing the head rigger's doing all the math. He's brilliant. They come up, they have to, use the different ceilings and the different points to hang the PA and the lights and the aerial stuff. And they have a 16, 18-hour day. My job's easy. That's cake for me, baby. I wake up, I have breakfast, I do my business, I go to sound check. I sound check with the band for 15 minutes. Pink comes in, we sound check for another half hour. I go eat dinner, I might take a nap, and then I get ready. And my whole world, the whole reason why I'm there is for that hour and a half or 2 hours I'm on stage. Mm-hmm. So I damn well better be bringing it. And the way that I look at it is every single moment, every note counts. I attach a sense of purpose to every single note. And the purpose drives the passion, and the passion drives the purpose. And how the hell else do you think I can play So What by Pink 800 damn times,
right. Although, and I read that in another interview you did where you said, I have a philosophy that every single note I play matters. What I'm wondering about that is, does that ever get in the way of seeing the big picture? Because it sounds like if you go down that road, you could get really hyper-focused and, I don't know, miss some of the grand scheme of things.
Well, that's a fantastic question. But remember what I said earlier. First and foremost, I'm there to be of service. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because people describe what's it like when you're in this state or when you're playing on stage. And it's this sort of hyper awareness where you are totally present and foreshadowing the future, paying attention to everything you do, as well as really paying attention to what everybody else does. I am so acutely aware of everybody else. That's one of the reasons why I get the gigs that I've gotten, is because of my awareness of others. So it's this hybrid of me paying attention to the nuances of what I play and paying attention to every little nuance so I can play off of everybody else and respond or change or shift or whatever needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because I am there to be of service first. So I don't get self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
I used to get self-absorbed. When the younger players tend to think about what they do, and you get in your own head, and you're playing every chop you know, and you want to show off. And as you get more mature, you realize it is the whole picture. And one of the things that helped me strongly with that was when I was in my 20s and I was producing music. I realized, wow, the drum part is there as the foundation. I don't want to play every single lip, lick, and chop that I know.
Yeah.
I want to set a foundation to make it easy for the bass, to make it easy for the keyboards, to make the vocalist comfortable. So I'm not there to show off and say, look how great Mark is. I'm there to be a part of, look at how great the total picture is.
Okay. Well, I mean, because that also makes me wonder, because another thing I read that you talked about was the importance of empathy, which is not a topic that one hears in the world of music all that often. And is this kind of an example of what you're talking about? You know, how does empathy play into what you do as a drummer?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Empathy means being able to understanding somebody else's experience through sharing that experience. Sympathy is like understanding or having compassion for somebody, but not understanding their experience.
Yeah.
The metaphor that I've been told is sympathy is when someone goes down the well. You send them a rope to bring them up. Empathy means you jump down the well with them. Now, that's not exactly the most positive example, but empathy means you understand how to relate from their viewpoint. So for what I'm doing is I'm putting myself in Pink's shoes, in the audience's shoes, in Justin and Eva and Jesse and Adriana and Jason and Stacy and Jenny's shoes and the dancer's shoes. So I try to relate to where they are coming from. It's understanding somebody else's viewpoint literally where you are seeing things from. Because if I just see things from my perspective, then I have a very myopic view, right? If I see things from other people's perspectives, then I have the view of everyone else. And it's the view, and that's what empathy is understanding. That's also a great way to be able to communicate, particularly if there's dissension, if you're having an argument with somebody, or if you don't. To be able to see things from somebody else's viewpoint can really enable you to get along and to be harmonious with others, even if you don't agree with them. It's not about agreeing. It's about understanding where they are coming from, their viewpoint.
And then, you know, going back to the studying you did, like, you know, for instance, for the Stevie Nicks gig, and really immersing yourself in the work of, say, Mick Fleetwood and how he approached things, you've said that what gives the greatest drummers their feel is they honor the space between the notes.
Oh, yeah.
What is the difference between honoring the space and just not hitting something in those few seconds?
Well, because you understand that the space is as important as the notes. You know, young players, and especially because there's so much on YouTube and so many people just playing so much stuff, that they're taking up all the space. And what makes pop music so beautiful, and what makes the definition of groove to me for an individual, is how your limbs align. So you could have 10 drummers sit down and play, and it's going to feel slightly differently because the way that everybody's limbs align in milliseconds is slightly different. And then you combine that with how musicians play together. And that's why if you listen to the Police and the feel of the Police versus the feel of the Struts versus the feel of Led Zeppelin versus the feel of the Beatles versus the feel of the Stones. It's how everybody plays together and how they feel that time and where they place it, because we all feel time in a different place. And the beauty of the space between the notes and honoring the space between the notes is all of the space. You don't push the space, you don't rush. One of the reasons why I love Ringo, and Ringo's known for having all this space, just like John Bonham. They say they play behind the beat. Well, what they're doing is they are allowing all that full space. They're not rushing it even 1 millisecond. Somebody that's more, like if you listen to the Ramones or some of these punk bands where they're kind of pushing the space and they're speeding up, it's great. It's part of the musical genre. It adds to the feeling. But to me, that's what honoring the space between the notes means.
Yeah.
It means you're appreciating that the space is as what you don't play is as important as what you do play.
And, I think it's, I would consider.
Thanks for doing your homework, by the way. You really did your homework. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. I tried, and this, I geek out on this stuff. So this is, kind of fun for me.
That's cool. I do too. So it's, yeah.
And, it's what's interesting and what I think is kind of an amazing different compliment is, and you've discussed this openly, that there aren't really actual drummers on Pink's albums. However,
well, they're on some of those songs, particularly the earlier ones. But more recently, she did have Taylor Hawkins play on her last record, one of the songs, which was great. Everything else was programmed.
Right. But when it comes to the live show, clearly she feels it's important to have an actual drummer there. What would you say?
Thank God for that. Yay, Pink. Unemployed.
What is the key to, honoring what was programmed and yet adding something extra that a machine can't bring to a live situation?
Well, and that is where our own individuality comes in. Essentially, what we do is we receive the tracks. We receive all the individual tracks, whether it's in Pro Tools or whatever format it is, and we essentially start eliminating whatever we play, right? So we may be playing along with some of the sequences or some of the loops. And then a lot of the drum parts are very basic. Here's a great example of what happens. The song, What About Us? The drum part is the entire thing. So when we first received it, she was going to show up for rehearsals in a week or two, and the manager said, she wants to kind of stick to the record a little bit. So a little bit more than normal. So we thought, okay, cool. So we basically learned two versions of that song. We learned a version where it was like the record, where Justin played very conservative guitar parts. I played just the bass drum and a sample on a Roland pad. And then we learned a version where we embellished it. Justin played some real crunchy guitars on the chorus. I played big toms on the chorus. And she came in to listen. So first we played the record version. And the record version is brilliant. I mean, it sold all these copies and she sells it. It's fantastic. Nobody debates how amazing that is.
Yeah.
But you listen to it and you could tell like she was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I actually stood up in my stool because I'm not shy. And I said, we have another version. A little more embellished. She goes, let me hear that. We played that. She's like, yes! So it's natural, I think, for bands. For me, personally, when I go to see a band, I do want to hear the record, but I'd like to hear an expansion of the record, an embellishment of the record, so it's not just the record.
Yeah.
There are some bands that play it just like the record. The Eagles are a perfect example. Rush is a perfect example. When they were playing, they played it like the record. And that was good because Rush, certainly Neil Peart, the parts were all so structured that I get it. It was like a classical piece. But But when it comes to an artist like Pink, we are there, in my opinion, to raise things, to bring things to another level. So live, they have an even greater depth and greater energy. And that's not to say that the original stuff isn't great, because it is. It's just that when you're playing live, you are vibing off of each other.
Yeah.
And there's an audience, and the arrangements change, and we are there to embellish it. And we are chosen, the players that are in the band are chosen because she likes the way we feel. She likes the way she embellishes. She likes us. You know, a family environment. It's really, really critical. You know, she basically, it all comes from her as far as everybody that's in the tour. And if someone really doesn't fit the tour, eventually they either quit or they get fired or they just leave. You know, the tour ends up being the greatest people. And if there's a bad seed in the tour, it becomes obvious. Or not even necessarily a bad seed, but the wrong seed, we'll call it.
Okay, yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean good or bad, just not the right fit for this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a fun clip that's online, and I think you use it in your introductory video for your speaking engagements, where, well, number one, where she says that you are the greatest drummer in the world, which is quite a compliment. And two, though, right afterwards, she hops on a small cocktail kit that they bring out on stage. First off, how would you describe Pink as a drummer, and how did you work out the interplay between you and her on each kit?
Yeah. Well, I don't use that in my speaking engagements, that particular clip, but it's an amazing clip. And, you know, the idea was it's still a show. Now, Pink, it was very good friends with Tommy Lee for a while. I mean, and basically she learned how to play a beat from Tommy.
Oh.
So when she sits at the drum set, it's like, gee, job, you know, Tommy's like a beast, right?
Yeah.
And she has a great groove. She's got great natural timing. You know, she was a gymnast. She's a great dancer. So it makes sense that she can play, you know, a good groove. So that was the idea that it was the director's idea, Baz. Baz is brilliant, and he's directed all, like, everybody from Kiss to Katy Perry to whoever, you know, to Taylor Swift. So it was the idea to have a fun little drum intro, you know, as part of the introduction. It was entertainment, but it's really cool. And it actually works because we actually play a song that, what was the name of the song? Are We What We Are, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And so it worked out. So what it was is she introduces me, and I'm playing all this big stuff. And she's like, yeah, that's great and everything, but listen to me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we have clicks on our ears, so we start together, and she plays along with me, and then it's great. And she's actually playing a little version of my kit. She's playing a little Gretsch bass drum and my little signature snare drum, and it's fun. And apparently, you know, with the previous drummer, Mila, she did the same thing. And Sabian actually made Pink cymbals for her. So she had another drum set, and they did a little drum battle. So, you know, it's fun and it's entertaining. I mean, she's not a drummer by trade, but hey, man, she can groove, she can play. Girlfriend's just got it going on. You know, she can do it.
And then to go a little deeper and geek out a little bit more on the drumming side of things, I saw you speak at one of Rich Redmond's drum camps, and you're one of the few people I know of who has studied under Freddie Gruber, who's, you know, now become, you know, quite a legend. And I had asked you, I said, what's one thing you learned from him? And you said there was something you came over, you know, to practice. And he said he could hear from like the other room that there wasn't enough air between your hand and the stick. And I'm, you know, and I'm wondering, how does that factor into how you play? And is that still something that you think about when you play?
Well, what happened was, you know, the way you hold your sticks, and the hand is actually a vibratory chamber, and you want to allow movement and air, and you don't want to be choking the stick. It's all about rebound, really. And my dear friend Bruce Becker, I'll give him a little plug because Bruce was the one that turned me on to Freddie when I was 17. And Bruce is the one that's taken all of Freddie's philosophies and taken them to another level. So he, to me, is like the greatest living drum teacher right now.
Okay.
Right. So what Freddie actually was saying was he could hear. He goes, "I can hear from the other room. You're choking the stick," meaning I wasn't letting it rebound. I was squeezing too hard. Had developed some bad habits, and he could hear it. So the idea is, especially because I play with a lot of velocity and a lot of movement. So it's almost like the more movement you play with, the more relaxed you need to be. Mm-hmm. Because if I was playing with tension, I would kill myself. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's about. It's about rebound, and the technique is all about how you can use the weight of the stick and the movement of your arms to allow the sound to come out of the drum rather than throwing the sound in. That's the best way I can describe it. And anybody that is serious about studying drums should study with Bruce because he set up this whole virtual setup anyway. And when I study, I still study with Bruce. I go back for refresher courses. Also, I'm in my 50s, man. I got to take care of my body. I can't tense up. So that's what, to me, the greatest drummers are the ones that just look like they're like water. It's like flow. Like I like to think of myself as a wet noodle, when I'm really in the groove and just relaxed, because it just takes all of the pressure and strain and overuse of muscles out of the process.
Right. Yeah, like another mutual friend and a client of mine, Daniel Glass, who's also another
Daniel.
Freddie.
Daniel, we did a drum camp with Bruce. We did the triple drum camp.
Yes. No, I remember that. I wasn't able to go, but I remember.
Daniel's a fantastic teacher, and what a drummer.
And
Daniel's been with Freddie for years. He has that stuff too. I mean, Dave Weckl got stuff from Freddie, Steve Smith. I mean, so many great drummers. Neil Peart. I mean, on the first "Burnin' for Buddy" record, Neil Peart was like ding, 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 with his playing swing. And then by the third one he studied with Freddie, was like, he loosened everything up, and that's what the idea is. It's the looseness. It's letting your body and letting the stick work with you as opposed to against you.
Yeah, and one of the things that Daniel tries to hammer home, both with his own students and with when he gives talks, is just letting gravity do part of the work, since gravity's a perfect force. And especially watching videos of your really big movements, you can see where it's like, okay, if he was tense, this would just be an absolute beating for a 2-hour show. And so it looks like you're just absolutely hammering, and the sound and the volume you get out of your kit, is just this thunderous cacophony, but it's you still have this relaxed look about you when you play.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that is absolutely true. And that's exactly the concept. Use the gravity with you. Use the gravity to your advantage. Mm-hmm. Because the arm weighs a lot. So if you allow the arm, if you allow the stick, this rebound where you're letting the stick drop, and then you come down, and you get so much sound and organic power, and with literally just the lifting your arm and letting it drop. Same thing with the feet, because the moment you tense up and you stay tense, it's all about the release. You can come and pull a stick out of my hand. My students tell me, "Oh, I dropped my sticks." I go, "Great! That means you're relaxed." Yeah. Better to drop your sticks than to be like holding on like this, like with this really, really tight fulcrum, because to me that's tension. And that goes against, it's like even a boxer. Boxer doesn't stay tense. He's all loose, and then bam, then he puts all that money. And same thing with a great batter or a great golfer. It's all about pulling it back and using the motion and using the gravity and the inertia to move the power for you. Same thing with a great golf swing. You're not muscling into it. You're bringing it back, and you've got this incredible inertia that you use that will allow all of that power and all of that strength, you know.
Yeah. And then to switch gears a little bit, just because you, as I mentioned, you give these speeches. You've talked in front of these large corporations and things of that nature, and talked about success and talked about work ethic. First off, why do, I mean, I have my own theory, but why do these companies bring you in? What does a professional drummer have to teach MBAs about business?
Well, I've worked very hard to make my content relevant to them, and saying it as quickly as I can and as easily as I can is I've given 1,000 drum clinics. So I took everything I learned from giving a drum clinic and applied it because I found that people were resonating with, when I did my clinics, more with my success coaching and my stories and my philosophies than just the play. I mean, I play enough so they know, oh, this guy's got chops, he can play something. I don't have, I have my 3 chops, I call them, but then I realized it was actually Don Famularo that had an experience. He had been asked by the father of one of the kids in one of his clinics to do a corporate version of what he did. And the guy paid him thousands of dollars. And I thought, I could do that because I can leverage my success. Mm-hmm. But then I needed to work very, very hard to understand the corporate mindset. And I work with a speaking coach, 2 speaking coaches, an acting coach, a storyteller, a director, and I found out what it is they were looking for. Because what I can provide then is I can provide all the energy, because music is such a great metaphor for top performance. So my whole philosophy is we're all performers, essentially.
Right.
And my flagship speech that I give now, I mean, my first book was called Conquering Life's Stage Fright, 3 Steps to Top Performance. Mm-hmm. So using stage fright as the metaphor for being able to perform in all areas of your life. Now it's based on the power of attitude. And it's based on this incredible formula that is so simple and so valuable. I didn't even create it. My co-writer, Dr. Jim Samuels, who's my life coach, who I've known for 35 years, created it. But it's based on the fact that we can't control what happens to us, as evidenced by the obvious pandemic. But we always have the power to change, choose, or shift our attitudes about what happens to us. You think about the power that gives you, because your attitude is your point of view, right? It's your vantage point or your disadvantage point, depending on the attitude you choose. But remember, it's not what we look at, it's what we see or perceive. And our attitudes are formulated, and our perceptions of ourselves and the lens through which we see the world is based on the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and the world. And I mean, what's your story? Is it a comedy? If it's a comedy, great. Is it a melodrama? Is it a murder mystery? But what is so incredibly powerful about attitude is the foundation of a formula, because your attitude, and think about this, it's really powerful. Your attitude is what drives your behavior. It begins with your attitude. It doesn't begin with your behavior. So people talk about behavior modification. You can't start there. You start with attitude modification. Then you drive more desirable behavior, or whatever behavior you choose, because your behavior is what determines the consequences or outcomes of your life. And this is A times B equals C. It's such a simple formula, but if you try it right now, look, you could ignore it, you could be interested, or you could be committed. If you ignore it, you'll never know if the formula works. If you're interested, you might try it. You might tell yourself a story why it doesn't work. If you're committed, you just say, I'm going to consciously shift my attitude right now to drive specific behavior that is going to produce consequences. And you actually start with the consequence first. What's the consequence? What's the outcome you want to produce? If I want to produce like this incredible groove at 120 beats per minute, right? And I can play it at 60, okay, let's backtrack. What do I need to do? What behavior? I need to practice it slowly and make sure that the space is even between each note at all different tempos, usually increasing in measurements of 4, and eventually I get it to 120. What's the attitude I need? The attitude I need is I I get to practice. I don't have to practice. Practice is a luxury for me. When I sit down what am I sitting on? I'm sitting on a throne, which makes me the king. So automatically I have the attitude that I'm going to, and I get to create this. So I've set myself up with an attitude of excitement and enthusiasm rather than an attitude of, oh, I'm practicing again. And I may, when I practice I've gone like 3 hours without drinking or eating or going to the bathroom because I just forget, because I'm so focused on the outcome, and then the behavior that I'm exhibiting is bringing me to that outcome. So this works in all walks of life. And the corporate audiences eat that up, especially when you combine it with Pink stories and Billy Idol stories and foreign stories and drumming. And I use drumming as a demonstration of some of the points that I talk about. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not what we play, it's how we play it.
Yeah.
Because what we play, who cares? As I said, 10 drummers can play the same thing. It's how we play it. That's how I got the Pink gig. It's how I do what I do. Mm-hmm. That's what she likes. That's what attracted her.
And, to pull another line that I saw that's part of this, where you wrote or said, there are no accidents to success.
Well, there aren't.
All right. But there is also a lot that's not in a person's control. So how do you mentally balance fate, responsibility, or and luck, and with that philosophy that you just outlined?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't balance it. I only can control what I can control. And I learned that a long time ago. Sometimes I get frustrated. And when I'm frustrated, guess what? It's always because I'm trying to do something that I can't control. So I think if we stay in the realm of what we can control, which is our attitude, which is our behavior, our actions, then the consequences we will hopefully derive the consequences that we want based on the attitude we have consciously committed to and chosen, and then the behavior we then are clear about doing based on the attitude, and then hopefully that will produce the consequences. And for me, it usually has. It doesn't always. The stock market's a great example. I can't control the stock market, but I can control doing research if I want to invest. I don't have a stockbroker because I don't want to pay the commission. So I do enough research that I invest in what I think is, based on trends and based on what I know. Because as far as I'm concerned, the stockbroker is throwing darts at a wall, and so am I. So I don't worry much about it. I do the best I can. Okay. When I'm sitting down to practice, however, there are things I can control. I can control how long I'm going to practice. I can set a realistic goal. If I set an unrealistic goal that's out of my control, then I'm setting myself up to fail. And then I'm going to learn from that failure. I've been studying so many entrepreneurs and very successful people, and they all say, man, fail big. And don't be afraid to fail. Just make sure that if you're doing it, you do it full out. Don't diddly-daddly around because I just failed a little bit. No, fail bad, fail good, fail great. Like when I failed my first bad English audition, that was the impetus for my first book. I failed so badly. I sped up. I was nervous. I almost fell off the seat. I made 2 promises to myself, though. One is no one would ever tell me I'm speeding up or slowing down unless I wanted to speed up or slow down. And the other one is I would transform my fear into confidence. So I put a lot of time into developing my internal sense of time by joining the rhythm course that Tom Mendola, if you look him up, he's still teaching it, which dealt mostly with clapping and working with a metronome and getting very comfortable and developing my internal sense of time. And then I just started reading all these books and becoming very philosophical about, and that's when I met Dr. Jim, about how I can transform. And that's when I developed, Dr. Jim developed I drew from his original version of the 3 steps, the 3 C's. He called it clear, capable, confident. I call it clarity, capability, confidence. Having an extremely succinct, clear goal. The more clear your goal is, the more you realize the capability you need to develop in that goal. And that's what leads you naturally to confidence. Real confidence, not fake confidence. Fake confidence is expensive and dangerous. So if you have a very clear goal about what you want to do and you work your ass off, you will develop real confidence in that segment. And on that note, brother, I got to run. I got another interview coming up.
Okay. Well, that's a great one to end on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm so grateful. My wife's called me 3 times. I know that she needs me. I'm going to say, bid everybody adieu. Everybody can contact me directly. My website, my direct email address is mark@markschulman.com. Email me directly. I will promise I will get back to you. It might take me a month, but I'll get back to you.